Watch today's full episode to learn how Hans transforms startup businesses using breathwork. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Ken. Today's episode of Clicks and Bricks, we have Hans Hageman. I think I'm saying that right. And he's going to talk to us about his breath exercise business. How you doing, Hans?
I'm doing well, and you got the name right. Thank you, Ken.
I did. Oh, fantastic. And I don't know if I said that what your business is the right phrasing for it. So can you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, well, my company is older but stronger, and the tagline for that is helping people to become an ancestor worth claiming. And the main vehicle I use to do that is the use of breath work, both what's called performance breath work, but also transformational breath work. You know, we take 24,000 breaths per day. Most of them are dysfunctional. Most of them are shallow. Most of them are ineffective. That has an impact on our sleep, on our digestion, on our psychology, on our body. And so I'm trying to correct that for people in a whole lot of different areas.
Fantastic. I know I've recently adopted meditation. I've tried meditating a lot in my life, but I think I really started understanding meditation within the last year, I think, right? And can you tell us a little bit about how important breath work is just in daily life? Like, do you think it's something people should do every single day of their life, or only whenever they're experiencing some kind of challenge or struggle?
I think it's something that people should do every day of their life for a couple of reasons. One nice thing about breath work, too, is it's a way of accessing a meditative state for people who think they can't meditate. So there's that value, and it has the same, if not more, benefits for people. And you're able to use it with a range of ages, people in a range of situations. I've used it for everything from police officers to downhill teenage skiers to young teens who are incarcerated for violent crime in a maximum security prison, to farmers who are facing stress that's leading them to thoughts of suicide. And so a breathwork practice can be incredibly extensive. You can do a whole weekend of just breathwork and benefit from it. And you can also do a breathwork practice that takes all of 5 minutes and gain tremendous benefit as well.
Right. I have a couple of breath exercises that I do that are just 1 or 2 breaths. Do you have anything in your wheelhouse that could help people, just like really, really short ones? I know I have one. I'm on failure. When I'm trying to think about failure, it's just breathe in, or when I'm just trying to change my mood, it's just 1 or 2 deep breaths and smile, right? Is that something that you would advise people to do on a regular basis as well?
Something like that is great. Just locating where the breath is, figuring out what kind of thoughts are taking place as the breath comes in, noticing if the difference in coolness versus heat, with the in-breath being cool and exhaling being warm. There are a couple of techniques like the box breath, where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold the breath for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and retain that for 4 seconds, repeating that just 3 cycles. Or doing a same cycle for 4 seconds in, hold for 7, exhale for 8. That's a 4-7-8 breath. It comes from pranayama. Dr. Andrew Weil has popularized it, at least in my world. But yes, simple techniques like that. Just being aware of your breath, where it is, where it's coming in. Is it high in the chest, shallow? Is it low in your abdomen? Are you breathing in a 360-degree circle so that your ribs and back, the muscles in your back, are also expanding? Just paying attention to those things can make a huge difference.
They say, you can have 3 days without food, or 30 days without food, 3 days without water, 3 minutes without oxygen, right? So breathing is wildly important for us every day, and it's something we take for granted. I think I finally became appreciative of my breath when I started really thinking about being grateful and adding gratefulness to something that I was really trying to overcome. But I could probably sit here and talk to you about breath work and meditation for hours, but this is Clicks and Bricks. We talk about business and technology. So how, for the out there listening, right, and audience, what you have to realize, if you're doing what you love doing, you're never working a day in your life. And Hans has taken something like breath work and he's turned it into a business, right? So this is what he's doing on a daily basis, that he's helping other people grow and strive. So I don't care what it is that you're doing in your life, what you're really passionate about, you can turn it into a business. I promise you, But Hans, can you tell us a little bit about what possessed you to say, I'm going to start a breathwork business?
Well, I'll tell you, recent health events in around the world had me think that, what do people need, and do they need me doing more of what I was doing as a nonprofit executive director? Did I need to go back to I ran a personal training studio for 5 years with my wife. Did I need to do that? And then the more I learned about breath work, and the more training I got from incredible teachers like Dr. Belisa Vranich, the more I realized that something as simple as that would be able to touch a range of people, whether it's a startup tech founder or a student going back to in-person classes, to again, the farmers that I work with, or to these kids that are incarcerated. That this is a tool that would be able to touch everybody. And I've had to make different leaps professionally in my life. When I practiced law for 9 years, everybody loved me because that's what you were supposed to do. You went to law school, and now you've made it. The credentialism that unfortunately affects too much of our society. Yes. And then when I started an independent school and gave up the practice of law, I actually lost friends because I was defined by my job and my title and my role. And so the current situation has allowed me to say, look, you're of a certain age. You talk about becoming an ancestor worth remembering. What's the greatest value that you could bring to people, regardless of any kind of judgment of it being, woo-woo or not scientific enough, or any of that? And the breath is where I landed.
Fantastic. So can you tell us a little bit, we talk a lot about doing what you love and pushing through, and you saying you've lost friends. And anytime you're starting a business, you have some people sitting on the sidelines that are criticizing you, that are saying, hey, what do you do? This is crazy. I'm making an assumption that you have a good support cycle or a good support system from your immediate family, at least. Is that accurate? Because
no,
it would be challenging to do even more so without that support system.
It is, and I have to tell you, the breath work is. I meditated for like the past 30 years. I've done hypnosis. I've done neurolinguistic programming. I've trained some of those things to police officers in places like St. Louis, Missouri, and in fact, Festus, Missouri, and Mississippi, and different places. And these are all tools I've needed because, unfortunately, the people immediately around me, prophet's not honored in his own home or whatever, haven't really believed. They like the majority of society. They like the safe answer, the safe and secure answer. So when I was running a $15 million nonprofit and making mid six figures, and everybody was going to fancy dinners and awards events, that was okay. But then to say, what, you've known that I am multi-passionate and I'm going to make an impact in a different way, all of a sudden the people closest to me, not just friends, but family, kind of pulled away. So.
Right. Well, that's sad. That's really sad. And then I think, and I even, I practice a lot of what you do, and I still poke a little bit of fun at it. Right. Not totally wrong to do, but it's not mainstream, right? It's, right. Oh, I'm sick, go to the doctor. I don't trust this thing. And it's really sad because the work that you're doing is wildly beneficial to anybody that just accepts it and tries it, I think, right? I don't even think you need to try it for long to start realizing some of the benefits. So if you're going to start breath work tomorrow and say, hey, I'm ready to start changing my life, and I'm going to start breath work tomorrow, and you did your first session, how many sessions do you think, or how long do you think somebody would need to practice before they started seeing positive results in their life?
Well, I think if I were to do a simple, what's called transformational breath work, and that's the real woo-woo stuff, just in one session, the people would say, wow, this has an incredible impact. And they then have to decide whether that impact, and it would be a strong one, almost to a person, they'd have to decide whether the things that they were uncovering, both in terms of how their body was functioning or dysfunctioning, how their mind was functioning or not, whether they wanted to go deeper into that, because they would be confronted in one session with the possibility that they would learn things about themselves that they might not, in fact, be ready to learn. So there's that. But even if it was a performance breathing kind of practice where I was teaching them to use their ribs more in the breath, to breathe more fully instead of up in the chest and the neck where you carry a lot of tension. Just even in a couple of sessions with the performance breath work, the changes would be noticed.
Right. So, and I want to dive a little deep right into your marketing, right? So I'm going to get off the topic of the breath work for a bit and go kind of take a deep dive into the marketing, because you're doing something and you've made a couple of statements about who all breath work is good for. And you started with the what in this particular business, which is the breath work, right? And then you're going to bring that to a bunch of different audiences. And I've done the same thing. And a lot of marketing agencies and marketing managers would tell me I'm doing it the wrong way. I should be starting with the who first and my why first, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess your why on breathwork was you can get a vast audience, but also on your marketing strategies, can you tell us a little bit about how you're marketing your product or your service to people when you have so many different buckets? Do you have different marketing campaigns for it, or are you educating the world on breathwork and then letting them come to you? Or are you really focusing on, setting up programs for the kids in prison, or setting up for business executives, or setting up for the prenatal mother, right, that needs the stress relief as well? So can you tell us a little bit about the marketing strategy about how you're doing that? And because you got a lot of different buckets on the whys, mm-hmm. and that becomes a challenge in marketing, right? I know this all too well by providing business services to everybody under the planet.
Well, I have a problem with shiny objects, and so that's one challenge for me. But I do have different strategies and tactical plans for each of the different audiences. So that, for instance, on LinkedIn, I establish relationships with people who've, as an example, just received Series A funding or seed funding. Talking both to the founders, but then also going behind and trying to engage the venture capital firms who've invested in these startup companies with that seed funding, and letting them know that this is what I do. And so the average now, apparently, for either seed or Series A funding across the board is $2.2 million. And so, if with 9 out of 10 of these businesses folding, I'm able to engage some of these venture capital people and saying, look, you might think this is woo-woo, you might not think it's science-based. Number one, I can prove that in fact it is. But even if that's still not enough, what can it hurt if you've got somebody who's, putting on their own oxygen mask, like they tell you on the airplane, to take care of themselves, and then the business actually has more of more traction. How much, obviously, is that worth to them? And they get those numbers, and more venture capital firms are writing self-care and personal development plans into the funding they provide. So that's one. With the farming piece, I was brought in just because I ran a nonprofit that did vegetable gardening programs and so forth in different schools. But when I realized that this organization, including Farm Aid, Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network, which is a national organization, we're talking about the mental health crisis among farmers. For me, practically, pointing out to the people that I was working with in these committees that the breath is something that's always with us. For the stigma that is often attached in so many areas, and certainly with farmers, for obtaining mental health services doesn't come up when somebody's sitting there and working with their breath. So part of it was just to get over the initial hesitation of telling people that this can have a powerful impact, then offering to do some free sessions. And then in at least a couple of cases, people insisted on paying for, then saying, can you bring this to a more national audience, and we'll pay you to do it. So it was just getting over the reluctance of talking about it in that setting. In the prison setting, one of the things that I'm going to be trying to do is, this is a maximum security prison for teen boys convicted of certain extremely violent crimes, and so they've been found guilty in adult court. And so it's not a large population, but some people would say these are the worst of the worst. But one thing these kids do need is their own self-care practice, because although I had 2 kids doing life, the other kids are going to be out 10, 15, 20 years on the street with me and my family and everything else. And so if I can bring breath to them, and then the people in the administration understand that it also keeps the lid on in the administration. So they don't care if it's woo-woo. They said if you can get these kids to calm down and become less violent inside, then we're all for it. And one of the things I'm also going to be doing is trying to get the state of New York to agree to a certification program where I'm going to train these boys to be breathwork practitioners. Because with the multi-billion-dollar growth industry in self-care and breathwork being a large part of that, if they come out and they're able to provide, for instance, breathwork classes or sessions in the schools that they may end up in or in the communities where they finally land, there's a better chance that they're not going to be recidivists. And in fact, they'll be able to contribute to their communities that they've taken from. So it's different approaches to different audiences. Some are obvious and people get it immediately. Others, like in the world of startup tech founders, not so obvious, but they're open to the conversation because they have a bottom line that they're desperate to figure out how to meet.
Right. So I just want to take a step back here for a second and thank you for doing the work with the kids in the prison. I grew up pretty rough and tumble life. I mentored in a school called Epworth here in Missouri that had some pretty rough kids. And I know it was a group home, but it basically was prison for those kids, right? So thank you for taking that for our country and for the mankind moving forward. That kind of work is really needed. And today we live in what we call a cancel culture.
Yes.
But America has been throwing our children away for decades, right? And it's a horrible, horrible process that we do. The education system, the prison system is all broken in our country. And it takes people doing what you're doing right now to even start having the conversations about how bad it really is. And I mean, we're talking about, if you can just make it to where these kids are less violent to each other, that's worth a lot of money to us. If we could figure out how to make them live productive, happy lives, we always say our future is not dictated by our past, but we're really quick to throw a kid, and I call it throwing kids away because I mean, if you live an existence in a 6x4 room, it's pretty much a thrown away life, right? It's a miserable existence. So thank you for that. I very much appreciate what you do, specifically in that particular realm. It means a lot to me personally, and it means a lot to the world. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But going back to what Hans did here, and this is very, very important. We talk about this every now and then. He used LinkedIn for the LinkedIn crowd, right? So when you're engaging on social media, make sure that you're using the platform that best represents the need or the desire that you're looking for. Not only that, he did a lot of diagnosis on who his customer was. And he understands that he's got multiple different customers and he doesn't use the same marketing approach for all of his different customer types. I see this in businesses all the time. They want to make one ad and think that it's going to be good for all customers. That works for Nike and Coke and Chevy. It does not work for the small and medium-sized business. If you're making an ad and you want to attract 40-year-old women to your yoga studio, then you need to have 40-year-old women in that ad. If you want to do 25-year-old men to go to your mud runner, then you need to be showing 25-year-old men in your ads. So really, when you're creating your ads and you're doing your marketing, you have to really, in today's world, in your online and social media marketing, you have to really hone in on who your customer is and talk to that customer with people that customer relates to, right? It's wildly important, and you'll spend a lot of money on marketing dollars spinning your wheels going the wrong direction. So use the social media platform for the audience that you want for its proper intent, and then also talk to the end user that you're trying to resolve an issue for. Stop trying to sell them something. Try to fix their problems, and your business will change drastically. So thank you for that insight, Hans. I appreciate that as well.
Well, I want to second that, Ken. And it's, one of the things I try to do is make people the hero of their own stories. And they don't see themselves as that until you point it out to them, that they have a role and a path in life, and they need to be the best that they can be as they move along that path. And so I've taken time out to do things like I was a finalist, I guess you would call it, for when I went down to Baltimore and interviewed for a copywriting position with Joe Schriefer at Agora, the top financial newsletter and saw how they worked. I didn't quite make the final cut there, but I also learned a lot more about how to have the copy and the things that you're talking about in terms of figuring out who is your audience, and that you can't speak to the same people. I've written copy for people selling, male enhancement products and people selling, for my own gym. I had to figure out who was that audience and what did they need, and I couldn't talk to them all the same way.
Absolutely. And if you're having that problem and you need to come up with your customer persona, I've got an entire exercise. It's somewhat exhausting. It takes a couple of hours, but I've got a whole exercise that I can walk you through step by step on how to identify your target audience or who your target customer persona is. And basically you're creating, it might be one avatar, it might be 20 avatars, just really depends on your product. A company like Hans, he's going to have a lot of different avatars that we build, right? Because he's going to have the kids in prison. It's not the kids in prison you're marketing to. It's not a dean. It's the wardens, right? Or it's the state legislatures. It's the school principal, or it's these different buyers, and you got to create those personas and really create a marketing campaign for them that solves their problem, right? You would not go and say, "Hey, teach kids in prison breath exercises." You would say, "Hey, if you're running an at-risk youth program, reduce violence by introducing, those kinds of things. Change your marketing campaign drastically." So, but no, you got to know your customer first. You got to know your why it's good for them. So, moving on, because I think we're doing pretty good on time still. So this is good. Do you have a tip or trick that you can share with our audience, very specific, that you use on a regular basis, either in life or business, that helps you overcome adversity, those really challenging times when you're ready to say, and not just the little bumps in life, when you're ready to say, I'm giving this up, my friends and family aren't involved, they're not supporting me, nobody's supporting me, I've got this dream, and how do I keep going when everything looks dark?
There are a couple things. One is I've had my 15 minutes of fame and met people like Maya Angelou and Oprah Winfrey, and I received an award from the late President John F. Kennedy's son, John F. Kennedy Jr. And so, there are moments that I can think back on and realize that, I guess, as I said, I was the hero of my story, and I can think back to those. And I also, as part of that throughout the years, said I needed to decide on the values that were driving me forward and stick to those values, and every day pay attention to those and ask if any action throughout my day or any interaction was helping me get closer to living those values out. And so creativity, freedom, and service are my top three values. And I, throughout the years, I've gone through different values exercises, and being able to hone in on those and having those serve as my foundation or my North Star has been incredibly important. And so when I do that, I can then take a step back, and I would be negligent if I didn't say I also include breath work as a part of that. And so just settling back in, revisiting my top three values, then engaging in some kind of breath practice that just brings me back to the awareness of my body and how I'm thinking about things has been critical. And so I'll either do a box breath of 4 breaths in, hold for 4, exhale for 4, then hold again for 4, and do 3 rounds of that. Or I'll notice where the breath is coming in, where I'm feeling it in my body, and noticing any sources of tension. And then there are other things, right? So when there are people who are not supporting me, or people who are actively trying to thwart my efforts, I realize giving them too much attention is just drinking the poison myself and thinking I'm getting back at them. So, I don't want to do that. But the breath work and maintaining those 3 areas of values are the main anchors for my life.
Right. So I get a little bit of flack from some people on my team because I read and I've got 13 core values, right? And I read them literally before every team practice. Do you think that's important to do that kind of practice? Like, if you've got your core values down and they're important to you, you think it's important to hear them out loud coming from your voice on a daily basis?
I think it's critical. And I think when
Critical.
you're critical, and when I do my own, my own experiments, informal experiments, and asking people what their top three values are, I should stop being shocked, but I still remain shocked when I find out that people have not given it any thought at all. And so what happens is, one of the things I also do is I've been a certified hypnotist for over 20 years. And, people think about different things about trance, but what people don't understand or realize is that everybody is walking around in a trance, and it's not generally of their own making. So if you don't know and aren't regularly visiting your top values, then you're remaining in the trance that media, politics, friends who don't want the same things as you, they're putting you in the trance of their making, and that doesn't serve anybody well.
Right. I find myself less today than years ago, but just going through the motions regularly. And I think that's the trance that you're talking about, right?
That's right.
You wake up, you brush your teeth, you do all those things, you get to work, and you don't even remember how you got there, right? Well, who the hell wants to live that life? I'm literally doing things that I can't even recall doing them, right? It's just so autopilot that it's not a great existence.
Well, and so it goes back to ancient, wisdom of Socrates or whoever said the unexamined life is not worth living. And that is incredibly true, but people don't even understand that that's a thing. So, yeah.
Yes. So I do. Socrates is one of my favorites. So I like going back to him quite frequently. Mm-hmm. So moving on to the next topic, and I like this one a lot. And this one's on thriving more so than overcoming adversity. So I find that, we always get what we need in life, right? You get what you go out and try to achieve. And I feel like so many business owners are stuck in the mindset of, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I need one more big client, or I just got to get past this next payroll and everything's going to be better. But when you're in those mindsets, you're always waiting for the next payroll. You're always waiting for that next customer. You're always waiting for that light at the end of the tunnel. And you never really get out of striving and start thriving in your business. And I can't tell you how many business owners I talk to on a regular basis that are stuck at that. And God tell you, I've been stuck there for more of my life than I ever care to admit. And I'm done with that part of my life. But, moving on, do you have a tip or a trick that you can share with our audience on how you take your practice to thrive in your business instead of just keeping your head above water?
Well, even despite my age, I'm pretty digital, but there are analog moments in my life, and I have notebooks here where I have scripted out the life that I intend to lead in the future. And I revisit them, not as often as I should, but on a weekly basis. And also because of how many years on the planet I've put in, I think more about my eulogy virtues instead of my resume virtues. And so that's a David Brooks thing. The journalist David Brooks talks about eulogy virtues over resume virtues. And I know how I want to be remembered. And I don't want people saying, he was treading water and kept his head above water. A lot of people don't, so good for him. That's not good enough for me. And so right. as I revisit my eulogy virtues and as I revisit my paper journals and look at the life that I've crafted for myself, however long I have left, I get inspiration to continue to move forward. And, so some of it also is focusing out like that, but then also focusing in on what's important now. But as soon as I figure out what's important now and take action on that, I then move back out to say, okay, this is that light that I've been looking for, and keep moving towards it.
Right. So I'll share a little bit of story about where I was for a long time and how I finally uncovered it. Is I romanticized so much with the underdog story because I've been an underdog so many times in my life, and I romanticized that whole overcoming the adversity and doing the thing that nobody else could do. So what I finally realized in my life is that I kept putting myself in those positions. I kept applying for businesses that were failing and turning them around. I kept putting myself in a position that it was going to take a whole lot of challenge, and you were the underdog to overcome it. Now, I love overcoming big challenges, but what I realized as I'm getting a little bit older is that, whoa, there's a lot easier work to do out there that's way more profitable. And I've gotten out of that mindset of, oh, I am an underdog, not anymore. Now I'm thriving in life. But for a very, very long time, I looked at myself as an underdog and thought that I was an underdog. So I kept putting myself in those positions. And you talked about, your visualization board or visualizing your future. And it really took until I started visualizing my future the way I wanted it to be, not the way I thought it was going to be, that things started to change for me in a significant way. And I think is that pretty much where you were going with you were writing down your scripts of the future and how that was going to look like? Or were you going a different direction?
No, that's in the right direction. And it's the kind of thing, when we talk about kids, that it's one of those quote soft skills, but that's something that needs to be taught in schools, because otherwise kids go on autopilot, and at best they're playing the underdog role that you're talking about, but never understand that they can aspire to even more, because it's just not taught.
And it's great to be an underdog, right? It's heroic to be the underdog and overcome those things, but nobody's teaching you, okay, when you overcome them, what's the next step? What do I do now? It's definitely not kick back and play Fortnite for the rest of the night, right? It's doing something else, learning a new skill, reading another book, reading another chapter, right? All of those things that you could do to continue moving yourself forward. And I find it so frequently, and I've done it too. And I think that's why it frustrates me so much when I see somebody else doing it. I'm like, I know your answer. I just listen to me, and I promise you it'll work. But they typically don't. Right. So, and in sales, and you've touched on this a little bit before, is if you're explaining in sales, you're losing, right? If I got to explain to you the benefits of my product or service, I'm losing. So I tend to go on an education task first, like, okay, I'm going to educate my product. And then people are interested in the education piece of what I'm doing. Then they'll probably buy my products and services after they're done being educated on how they are. So, and I've really liked that approach over the past couple of years. So
makes
it works
sense.
really well for me.
Makes
I think it works. I think it works well in any industry that you're in. So teach the people how to not use your service, and they'll pay you for your service.
Right.
That's right. So it's pretty crazy. So moving on to the last question of the day, since this is Clicks and Bricks, we talk about business and technology. Is there a piece of technology that you use in your life or your business that has made a significant change in either of those facets?
Something that I've used in the past couple of months that's made a huge difference is a project management tool called Jumple, Jumpl. And I've tried a bunch of different project management tools, and both in terms of when I'm working solo or if I'm working in a remote team or anything. And Jumple is the one that it's just user friendly, both the user experience, the user interface. It's the kind of thing that makes sense. Some of the other tools I used in the past were just too complicated or overbuilt, but this seems to be the one that's helping me a lot.
Fantastic. And it's called Jumple?
Jumple.
Jump.
Jumppl.
Oh, fantastic. I use a product called Asana. I'm not affiliated with either one of them.
Yeah.
And I like Asana just because it's really simple and straightforward. It's not, I'm gonna butcher this name, but you were in corporate America for a while. It's Natboards, GNAT. I don't know how to say it.
GMAT, yeah.
I hate them. They're horrible. They're always off scope. There's always scope creep. There's always things you didn't think about, or a project manager that overthought every single detail. I'm like, we're going to take an hour to plan a 10-minute task.
Right.
It just doesn't seem right. So I really like the simple project management tools, and I'm going to check out Jumple for sure, just to check it out, kick the tires, and see if I like it. Maybe it's an alternative to Asana that we're currently using. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Did you have anything that you would like to share with the audience? How would they get in contact with you? Do you have any offers for them, to get started? How would they get in contact with you?
The simplest way would be something called sleek.bio. It's kind of a link tree tool. So it's sleek, SLEEK.bio/Hans Hageman. And if they go there, they'll see almost everywhere I am. My websites. There's a free guided visualization audio that they can get access to, a bunch of different things. That's the easiest way. I'm also Ronin for Life on Instagram.
Fantastic. And we'll throw those up in the descriptions on the YouTube channel once everything is all done and said. So thank you so much for joining us today. Before we go, do you have anything else you'd like to share with the guests?
No, this is great. I hope you get, and I think recently you mentioned that you were up to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I hope that doubles and triples really soon, because the message that you're putting out there in terms of people thinking through their business in terms of strategy and tactics, it's an important message, and I hope more people hear it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. That's it for today, folks. Thank you for joining us with Clicks and Bricks. That's all for today's episode, and get to work.